Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube and you'd like to get more information, you can go to officehours.global to find out more about what we do. First hour is a general discussion, any questions that people have around, and you need to kind of go through officehours.global to find out how to ask the questions and how to vote on the questions. But for the folks that have gotten through that, first hour is general questions, and any questions you have about media production or virtual production. Second hour is something that we've decided to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to do Ruthless reviews, which is where we pick at each other. So we're going to look at all of our setups and pick on some of them and try to improve what we do amongst ourselves. And it's usually a great learning experience as far as look and feel. And it's why I think it's one of the reasons that these panels look so amazing. So anyway, we'll be doing that in the second hour. Tomorrow, we're actually going to talk about the kits. Today, we'll talk about how they look. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what we do with our kit. How do we get it to look like this? And so we're going to show behind the scenes of that. And then on Friday, we're going to talk about accessibility. Our own Laura Thompson's here, and we're really excited to have her. She's going to be talking about why it's important and how it works and what to think about. So it's going to be a great Friday, second hour. Saturday is the long day. We have education at 8. We don't stream that. We let the educators talk amongst themselves. But then we come back at 10 o'clock. We're going to talk about metahumans, and I'm actually leading that. Nick's going to be out. And I'm going to talk about how I work with MetaHuman to develop characters, and so we'll all do it together. My recommendation, by the way, is to go out and sign up for MetaHumans. It takes sometimes as much as a day for you to get approved, so it's not something you can just jump into. Because what I'd recommend is that on Saturday you already have it opened while you're in Zoom, so that it's all done in the cloud, so you don't have to have a really fast computer to do it. It's kind of fun. And then at noon, Damayanti Gajar is back, and we're going to be cooking together. Everyone, you're welcome to look at the recipes. I think I might have sent out the wrong link this morning, but we'll fix that, or Ken will fix that. But we'll get that working. But I highly recommend getting the recipe and joining us. You can actually cook along or just watch, but cooking along is a lot of fun. So we'll be doing that at noon. All right. So let's jump into the questions. Bill, what do we have?
Chris Fenwick here in Sacramento, and on the panel starts out this morning with the first one. For a group of nerds like this, what is the most Kobayashi Maru moment in your career? So a no-win situation you faced.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, 94, I was doing email administration, first time in the data center. I had to reboot one computer, push the button in, realized it was the wrong one, used a matchbook to kind of jam into the button to keep it going so we could successfully shut it down.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Walking into a theater, finding out the people who had been tasked with doing a job all day hadn't, and having 30 minutes to repatch a live-to-air multicam broadcast using analog era connections. As in no time-based correctors, no nothing, and having to time the cameras.
No, but the question is when you ask this,
I'm getting to that without getting everybody annoyed that I had suddenly pulled the entire system apart.
The question is though, is the question a Kobayashi Maru, was it a close call that you succeeded at, or was it something that you just plowed into the ground? That's the question, Chris. Is it one that you
that's a fair clarification.
Because there's the true Kobayashi Maru, or there's the Star Trek version of Kobayashi Maru where he cheated to beat the system.
Did he cheat? Or did he beat the system?
That's the whole.
That's really the thing.
I take the Spock view. I think he cheated.
I think
totally changed the rules, man.
I think the true spirit of it when it comes to Star Trek is you're put into a no-win situation.
Yeah. And
you beat it.
Okay, that's the question. Okay, so I just want to make sure it's no-win situation and you beat it. Not a no-win situation and you like, well, here comes the ground, because I've done both. Anyway, go ahead, Jason.
All right. Years ago, I was calling a show that was 2 hours long, and about 5 minutes before the show, I realized that I had to do a power cycle check, and I started to push in the button, and it was the wrong button. And I realized that I was about to turn off all of the stage lighting. So I kind of grabbed my radio and got a PA and actually apologized and had him hold his thumb on that button for 2 hours. And it worked. So I suppose that's a cheat. But yeah, about 5 minutes after we stopped the live show, the stage lights went out. Whoops.
Yeah. Jeffrey?
So, and yeah, I am using these box on here. So basically, I do a lot of enterprise in-person
No
blogger
pun
stuff,
intended.
and no pun intended. And it actually goes for a question that actually came up last week about some enterprises. They'd like to block ports for some reason. And we were in communication with them because I knew that this place blocked live stream ports. And I said we had to have that port open, and all the employees, they all sat there and they said, yeah, that port's open. We're all good to go. We plugged the cable in, nothing. And this is in the area that cell signal's not that great. And we had a cell signal and a MiFi. We did it at Jerry Rig, where we actually had the phones, they were sitting next to windows to bring in the signal so we could live stream this event out to the public. And it actually worked very successfully. We were still doing like 360 to 720 at that point in time, but it was still a pretty successful one, and I was really surprised that that worked.
Okay, we're going to go pretty quickly because this we could talk. We could do a second hour on this, like easily. Go ahead, Sky.
So the original episode pilot of a show called Bones, it was pilot season. I was working at Matchframe as the online editor. The producer comes in, hands me the master tape. And he said, I need to reinsert a scene into this one segment. I said, you've got a backup. And they said, no, that's the master. So I digitized the entire thing, edited in his new scene, and then re-output to a new master, because he wanted me to cut from a nonlinear editor into a tape. And that was early days. I didn't want to do that. So
Bill.
Mine was an audio issue. I was hired to do video and audio for the Athena Awards in Phoenix one year, and that is a group of we had maybe 150 very high-powered women in the room, and the speaker was a wonderful woman named Sue Hershkowitz-Kur, and she came up, and we had worked together maybe twice before, but I didn't know her super well. And she literally walked up and I said, well, I've got your lav pack. And I looked at her and she was wearing a form-fitted, lovely business dress that had absolutely no openings and absolutely no place to put a mic pack. And I remember this cold chill going down my spine as I tried to figure out how in the world am I going to mic this woman and maintain everyone's dignity. Because I thought maybe, there are packs you can put on for Broadway and things like that. It's just not the right time to go in that direction. I eventually ended up thinking, oh my God, she has a handheld mic. I'm going to strap the lavalier pack onto the handheld mic and hope there's no frequency mess. And there wasn't, and I got out of it. But the half hour of trying to figure out how to mic her was just a nightmare in my mind.
We had I think I might have told this story before, but I'll tell it really quickly just to answer the question. We had a situation, we had a broadcast truck, really big project down in Los Angeles. There's a lot of people watching. And it was there for days. Night before we had a primary and a backup, but we left the backup off because the client didn't want to spend $6,000 a day running a backup. These are not little generators. This is the size of a container. These are cat generators. And the container blew a head gasket at 3 a.m. and Cat was kind enough to just turn it back on again, like without talking to us. And so it hard started the truck, a broadcast truck. Everything was working when we got there, but they explained what happened. And so we were like, okay, we have to swap that. And they were like, do you want to swap the power out? And I was like, no, sure. I was like, I don't think we can do that right now, but if you can do it by 9:15, 11 o'clock show, we'll do it, but otherwise we're not going to do it. That was an impossible situation because if it died during the show, then it'd be my fault for not changing it over. So I had to give them some possibility of doing it. And they came, we slowly turned the truck down and then brought it slowly back up. Harris routers, these are $250,000 routers, 256 ins, 256 outs. They run the truck. It's where all the video goes through the truck. There's 2 cards, and when the cards start up, they sync. So when it was hard dropped, it corrupted one of the cards. When it was brought back up, they synced the corrupt card into the other into the good card, and so it corrupted the other card. So suddenly we didn't have it was 9:30, and we didn't have a router for the whole show, and so we working through it. At 10 o'clock, we had to tell our client that we don't have a router. And they're like, well, you can record on the cameras. We're like, no, we have triacs. Like, the cameras don't have a record, so there's like nothing. This is, I don't know what the total budget was. It's somewhere between $5 and $10 million. And so they're not in my budget, but that's what the total budget was for the thing. And anyway, so there's people were pretty stressed. And so we just kept on getting ready. We had to do a red carpet, which we now shot with an iPhone, just walking down with handheld iPhone, loaded it into the truck. And the first camera came up at 1040. The engineer was hard patching. They were basically hard patching the show through the Sony switcher. And first camera came up at 1040. We had last camera came up at 1057. We still didn't have the graphics, but we just used the jib to capture the LED wall, and started on time. but when we were done, it was and here's the thing. This is why you hire really expensive, people that are really good at what they do, is because there was a whole lot of people that didn't freak out, that just sat there and just kept patching. Like there wasn't a lot of yelling. There wasn't a lot of upset. There is no plan B. There's nowhere to go. It's just make plan A work, and I, it was an incredible team, and I did very little other than just focusing on it and listening to people talk about it and encouraging people to keep going. But it was a brilliant team. And so when you get into those situations, this is why when we hire people, we hire good people, because when you get into these situations, it's not what people can do on a sunny day. It's what they can do on a rainy day is what you want to know, and that was the only reason we did it. And of course the client came back and said, this is the best show. The client that didn't know, the end client, this was the best show ever. So and I was like, that's great. Now I'm going to go sit and stare at a wall for an hour. Like I just needed to box breathe for a little while. Anyway, next question.
Moving on to Tobias Moss. Tobias asks, in a Zoom meeting, what are the creative uses of non-person additional Zoom squares besides WLM meters? For example, announcement slides, question of the day, looping playback of some soundless video, and so forth.
Go ahead, Leo.
So I do a monthly meeting where we need to have countdown timers for people when they're talking. So we will put up a clock that will look like this. And it will run through. So it normally runs from 3 minutes down or however long they've got. When this gets down to 15 seconds, it will turn to red, and then it will go to 0 so that they know. This has kept 200 people on time every single meeting. When they ask questions, the questions don't go on too long.
Jason?
I've used them for survey results in real time to kind of get people to keep participating, especially with a real-time survey. I've also used them. There's an app called Millisecond Clock for tvOS that is really, really great to show you if there are frame stalls in the meeting. Those are my two.
Go ahead, David.
I've had some nonprofits put up a QR code for donations. They log in as another user called Be Generous, and then they just keep on that screen a QR code so that people can make donations.
Go ahead, David.
In case of emergency, you can use the mute all button, throw up the test card like so, and blank everything out if necessary.
Jeffrey?
One presentation where the person wasn't controlling the slides, they had another person do that. So what we did was we set up another computer to the side, another Zoom computer to the side, where all it was focused on was their hands. So when they did the thumbs up, that meant that the person needed to go to the next slide instead of saying next slide, because we weren't recording that part of the event. We were just recording the person's face and, of course, the presentation.
Next question.
Moving on to Aaron Huslage's question from Durham, North Carolina. Aaron asks, what is the optimal setup for feeding audio from my computer out to Zoom without switching audio sources while still being able to monitor it through the MixPre3?
Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
For my live stream, I needed exactly that. And what I did, I wired my MixPre into the Atem Mini Extreme as mic 1, so I have my mic. But what I then do is I also wire the headphone output of the Atem Mini Extreme into the stereo in of the MixPre3. And what that allows me to do, my PC basically now sees two outputs, the MixPre, where I'm getting Zoom over, and if I need to play something into Zoom, I can put it into the Atem Mini. but it's confusing sometimes.
And I use loopback for that. I mean, that's how I do pretty much anything that's complicated inside my computer. That's all has to happen with audio, loopback and audio hijack. If you're on a Mac. So, next question.
Next one comes from Rupert McRae here in the panel from Dallas, Texas. Any thoughts on the recent T-Mobile data breach?
Go ahead, Aaron.
T-Mobile's in big trouble. This is the third time they've had a data breach. I think I don't know if they're going to get their stuff together or not. They waited also to communicate the data breach until they talked to CISA, which is the Computer Information Security Agency, and which is a problem because there was rumors of this breach for a week, and they didn't say anything. And then they talked to CISA, and then they said something, which is not normally how you disclose breaches. So there's a lot of, I mean, I think they'll be fine, but I think they're going to be in trouble, like
Jason?
from a financial point of view.
I'll forgo the discussed, offering 2 years of McAfee's ID preventive, insurance that doesn't do anything against identity theft, and just say, eventually, hopefully, there will be a data breach big enough such that federal law will some way require that at very least publicly traded companies are required to disclose any sort of breach.
Over time, I think we're going to move, as the technology improves, I think we're going to move towards more and more biometric IDs, which will make some of this less important. You're seeing the beginnings of that. It's still imperfect, but as it gets better, to do anything that's really important, like bank accounts and changing things and everything else, biometrics are going to be required because that's the only way to get through this. There's no way to protect your data. Like, just like that's why if you listen to us on MacBreak, that we get so wound up about Apple starting to dig through our phone. There's no way to protect this, so you just have to hold it off there. You just have to know that that's going to be the case. There's going to be leaks. Your information will be leaked. Leo?
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that also I notice, interestingly, that the magnetic stripe is going to be disappearing off the back of credit cards. I mean, outside of the US, nobody is using a magnetic stripe anymore. Because we've been using chip and pin for a very long time, so we've gone away from that technology.
And chip and pin,
yeah,
magnetic stripes are almost gone in the United States as well.
Yeah, and it's noticeable that people are going, we can't think of security as a second thing. We've got to think of it as the first thing. That's why in the past it was all about convenience. But convenience comes at a cost. So now you have to sit there and say, well, it can be convenient and it can be a level of security. So one of the things that happened very fast in the UK is when we moved into lockdown, they immediately increased the amount that you could play on, especially on a mobile phone, on an iPhone, when you just hold it up against a reader. So we will move away from these things, and we have to, unfortunately, to get on there, you need these sort of things to happen to make people realize they have to do it.
Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Just a reminder that the only absolutely secure way to keep your data secure is to not put it online. So if you've got stuff that you don't want to be let out, don't put it on any device that's online, and only put stuff online that you are willing to lose control of.
Next question.
Patrick Dolan in Dallas, Texas is up with our next question. Best options for using a Stream Deck with vMix on an AWS instance.
Jonas?
It really depends on your use case. There are multiple options. One is using Companion on the vMix instance and using a USB pass-through. I would not use that option. What I'm doing right now is having Companion locally and having a small VPN server in AWS, connecting to that VPN server and then passing all my control data through it. You can also use Streamweaver if you want for that, or how Chirac does it. He has two companions, one in the cloud, one locally, and the local one talks to the cloud. So if he makes changes to, because he works with a large team, so as soon as he makes a change in the cloud one, it cascades to all the local ones. And the last option is central control, because that one also has a cloud option.
Next question.
Comes from James Babbitt here in San Diego. He says, using an Amazon Echo Show 8 to bump up the resolution of a Zoom meeting, sometimes the Zoom video stats go up to 720, but the video resolution doesn't seem to actually improve. What might cause this?
Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Could be the account settings of the host, and it could also just be the requirements, the physical computing requirements or bandwidth requirements of the participants.
And yeah, on the far end, if the far end is slow, you may have a 720p meeting that someone else can't reproduce. You know, like their end isn't fast enough to do that as well. And then you'll end up with lower resolution video that will get scaled up to 720, but isn't 720. Next question.
Brian Becker in Charlottesville, Virginia asks, can you briefly explain the optimal camera framing for remote contributors and what exactly you mean when you compare old broadcast to new?
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm just going to deal with the second part of the question because I know people will jump in with the first part for a second. When we talk directly to the customer, to the camera, when we're talking directly to the person watching, this is a new media way of doing things where you're having a conversation. Now, if I was across here and I was looking at a reporter standing beside the camera and I'm having a conversation with the reporter, not with the person watching, that's old media.
Go ahead, Carl.
So old media had safe zones, new media doesn't need safe zones. So we usually see full aperture on nearly every LCD screen you're going to see.
Yeah, so if you look at my framing right now, my head is just barely underneath the, and sometimes if I go up like this, I'll actually get cut off. That's a much more new media thing. If I was doing old media, I'd be like this, because this is in my action safe, right? So this is the height my head would be, and it feels, when we're watching YouTube, it feels very short in frame is usually what we would say when we're used to it there. So I tend to frame everybody up. So when we do it, we tend to frame everybody up so that their head, we'd rather cut a little bit of their head off than have it be low in frame. It makes them look smaller than everyone else, and it's not attractive. So we tend to push people's head up a little bit higher. It also makes it easier for us to, if we decide to do lower thirds underneath, it allows us to do that as well. We generally want their chin high enough that we can put lower thirds under it. That's kind of what we think about there. We do try to center everybody. And the reason that we want to center them is so that if we put them into a super source, that we don't have to adjust it. So that becomes, so we kind of look for that as well as far as how we're figuring out the framing. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, and the classic is the other rule of thirds. So there's a, put a tic-tac-toe board on the screen like that, and the eye should always sit on the line, the upper third line going horizontally across the screen. As you zoom in, those eyes should stay on that third. They should not be, up here or down here.
Unless you're trying to make a point. Next question.
Brian Becker is right back from Charlottesville with another second question. When you say that Wi-Fi was not designed to stream live video, what exactly do you mean? Is there a speed latency where Wi-Fi could be acceptable for a remote guest? And what speeds kick off warning emails before the event?
Go ahead, Aaron.
Wi-Fi was designed to transmit data between, a router and your computer in small packets. It was not designed for streaming media, for large file transfers, things like that. That being said, there are current Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi AC are designed for streaming media because that's the use case that we're living in now. They're improving quite a bit, but in the end, they're still not as good as a wire.
Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
Wi-Fi, by its very nature, does not maintain a persistent connection. With video, you need a persistent connection.
Yeah, Jonas.
And if you could use something like SRT to have buffers on both ends, so you can mitigate some of the issues you have with Wi-Fi, but then you'll need at least 1 or 2 seconds of latency.
Yeah, the bottom line is that the your Wi-Fi, it's because it's so low latency, 200 milliseconds on each leg, that causes a problem. If when your Wi-Fi router drops is when it sees something else hitting the AP, so the access point. If nothing changes, it actually is just as stable as Ethernet. But if you're in a place where things are moving in and out of its space, every time it looks over to a new device, it's going to drop frames. So that's what it's doing. When you see someone phase out, there's devices or there's things that are coming in and out of its zone that it's now managing, and it starts to drop the frame. So if you're in the country in the middle of nowhere, we found that Wi-Fi works perfectly well as long as no one moves anything. But as soon as you move it and it's going in and out or changing its state, it starts to drop frames. And in an urban environment, even a minorly urban environment, it just falls apart completely. So we have clients that talk about, oh, well, I have a 10 gig connection into my building. Doesn't matter. They have a ton of people walking around those APs as well. And so it's just as unstable as it goes through there. As far as speeds go, anything under 6 megabits, we'll tell a client we're worried. Like that 6 megabits up and down is what we want to see reliably on speed test. And if we don't see that, someone's going to get an email. Go ahead, Courtney.
Alex, you covered most of it very completely. But one thing I was going to mention is that if you have a lot of Internet of Things, in other words, Wi-Fi control, lights, switches, thermostats, things like that, they're constantly pinging the network. And they're almost always on 2.4 gigahertz. So if you have AC and you have 5 gigahertz band, use that for your video connection. I've been on Wi-Fi for about 1.5 years here, and it's been pretty solid. But I'm the only one using this particular channel anywhere near me. And the router is only about 2 feet from the computer.
Next question.
David Brady is back from New York with another question. This time, are there ways to polish out small scratches from an LCD display? Not deep, but annoying on white surfaces, he says.
Carl?
So it depends on the LCD display itself. So you got those really soft ones that you think early 2000s kind of LCD displays, and you got essentially like Apple's, which are all glass with maybe a coating on it. Your best bet is if it's on a softer one, you're kind of not going to be able to do it because it's just too soft. And anything else, if you keep on touching it or keep on trying to smooth it out, you're just deforming the plastic more. On a harder surface, which is kind of like Gorilla Glass with a plastic coating, you can take it to a jeweler. Jeweler have polishing. You can take an old phone that's scratched, take it to a jeweler, get them to test on the old phone first and see which is the best polishing equipment they've got to get out scratch on your old phone, and then test it on the device. You're really important.
It'll probably cost you more than buying another monitor. It is why I use undersling. The reason I moved quickly to an underslung mic was because, of course, I got one, and I bought a new monitor and a new mic arm, and I scratched the new monitor like within a half an hour after setting it up because of that. And I was like, okay, I need an undersling. Enough of this. Next question.
Bo Cordell's back in from Charleston, South Carolina with, what are your go-to video test patterns for HDR video?
Carl?
So this one's a pretty easy one for me. This is Jay. So Jay has this is his website. He also has a YouTube channel and they're HDR. But on here, you can actually see all the different formats that Jay does. So the most important thing is they've got all the flavors. So they've got the 2 Technicolor flavors of HDR. He has the SDR as well. HDR 10, 10 Plus, HLG, and Dolby Vision. This is the same video. The most important thing of this particular video is actually the first 30 seconds. So the first 30 seconds has this, it's a dynamic test pattern. So the actual video on the center moves, but I've just got a freeze frame here. But what's really important about this test pattern is what it shows you down the bottom here. It tells you what every grid is. So he's got it, B1, A4. Every grid is, it tells you exactly what it's coded for. And this is in every different format. So you can do HDR 10 Plus. What does this look like HDR 10 Plus? And because of that, you've got this amazing kind of reference to what the person who created the video and what they did in every single grid or across certain grids with some of them. And so it's a reference. You don't want just a pretty image and how does this pretty image look? You need to know what each box was, and that's what this does. And it's quite an amazing video. So I suggest popping out to his website and taking a look. They're free.
And what's that
downloads.
website again?
So I'll put it into Meccana chat, but I've got it up on screen now as well.
And for a video test signal that you're going to play out, I think I haven't seen these, but I'm sure that they're very good. For the absolute test patterns that you will use when needing to do this, there's really only one, and that's the SRI test patterns. I just put it into Meccana. These are the test patterns. They are the most technically the most amazing patterns ever made. And we're going to try to get them on. They said they'd come on and then I just dropped the ball. So we're going to bring them on and have them talk about them. But what makes them different is you can run them through a pipeline, and on the other end, you can interrogate the entire pipeline visually. It's not a scope. It's not everything. And you can see if it was transformed, if it was scaled, you can see if it was, if it went to 8-bit and then back to 10-bit, and they built images that will do something specific based on what it went through and what you're seeing right then. Are you seeing HDR? Is it, like all of those things are seen scientifically from the image. Like if you know what you're looking at with the image, you can pass it through. You don't need any technology. They have many patterns that they can run through. I literally spend a half an hour with them every IBC and NAB, just having them walk me through it and what's new and what have they changed and how have they done it. I don't own it. I get companies to buy it because it's expensive. Like the full package is like 20 grand, for 4K and all the patterns and everything else. We may have discussed a pattern earlier or last week. That pattern was generated from SRI. So, that was distributed about an HLG pattern. So it is the standard in my opinion. That said, I'm going to check out the one that Carl did because it's a lot less expensive. All right, next question.
Moving on, Tobias Moss is in with our next question, and he asks, given that the selfie, photo, video, and video calls are such a big thing, why don't cell phone makers give you better self-facing cameras? Are there models that do priority this?
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, so Apple has definitely stepped up this game over the last 5 years. And so the 12 Pro Max and the iPad, the current iPad M1 Pro, they both have 12 megapixel sensors at the front, 2.8 and 2.2 with the iPhone. The iPhone can do 4K 60 on the front camera. It can do 1080, 120. It can do Dolby Vision, 30 frames a second, 4K. So that's just the front camera. And it actually has dynamic, what they call cinematic image stabilization. What it means is that when it's fixing your shakes, it's not doing it in a linear format. It's doing it in more of a logarithmic format, like a human would. And of course, over on the iPad Pro, you have center stage, which is pretty cool technology, to be honest.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So there is one phone, and I have it here, and I'm just dropping the name out. That's from Asus, and then of course you got to order it special, but it's actually got a camera that will flip back and forth. So it's got 3 cameras on it, and the front cameras are the selfie cameras. And it's really nice because I can put that in that's what I use for my home kits, and it's easy because then they can see themselves while they're being recorded.
Aaron and then Jason, real quick.
Historical reason is that people like big screens and they don't want big things on the front of their thing, and the optical size is tiny. So
yeah, Jason.
He pretty much nailed it. The optimization is for thinness and smoothness. You can't have a bump on the front, and
I'd be so happy with the bump on the front. Like if they gave us that,
I wouldn't care at all.
I would buy. They should just. I just wish they'd make a pro version that was really pro. Like it's like we don't care what it looks like. It's just going to give you. It's going to be a great phone. It's going to have great cameras, and it's going to cost $2,000 or $3,000, but it's going to be amazing. I'd buy that phone. Anyway, next question.
Will O'Neill is up next from Alexandria, Virginia. Let's click it. Yes. I need to webcast an event, a single camera event at a location with very poor internet. He's thinking of a LiveU Solo, which will bond 2 hotspots. Is this the best option, or are there others? And he asks, are there any under $2,000 US options for 3 or 4 bonds?
Go ahead, Leo.
So the first thing I'd say is, can you get to the venue in advance? If you can get to the venue in advance, try out all of the 4G and 5G networks out there. You only need people with different phones on different services, because you could end up spending a lot of time trying to bond things that aren't going to make any difference to it. And being there, even if it says on the map when you do the signal checker that this is a great signal, I found they don't. And we found that has been the best way, is to get there. I always worry about bonding, because bonding needs something to work at the other end for it to work successfully. When you're live streaming, it works very well when you're doing data transfer and moving large packets, but when you're trying to live stream, the 2 ends have to be tied together.
Go ahead, Carl. And then Richard.
If this is just a single camera, I'll give you 2 ends. So one would just be use an iPhone and pick the network. So pick the network that works best in that area, as Leo said. The other option is, if you're going to go the other way where it's super critical, then you have a microwave point-to-point to a fiber connection.
Go ahead, Richard.
I've had great success with the LiveU Solo. I would just note that the LiveU Solo comes in 2 varieties, the LiveU Solo and the Solo Plus. And the Plus gives you more bonding options. So just be aware that there is a way of stepping up even within the LiveU ecosystem. Definitely test, as Leo said, and has been pointed out, you know, the bandwidth or the cell signal in one location during the day when no one's around is completely different than when you have 300 to 5,000 people in the room. So give it a wee test. But I've had great success, and we use it as a backup even for our venue, which has, you know, hardline internet.
And you got to decide whether you need it all the time or whether you need it just once. If you need it just once, you can rent a LiveU for $2,000. You know, like you can rent the big one, like the 800 or 600 for $2,000 and just have it, you know, have more bonding options. If you want to buy into something that you're going to use all the time, then buy something that's less, but you can get the full size with that. Go ahead, Richard, real quick.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but with the larger ones, you also need a server to receive the signal.
I think that there's actually a function in LiveU that will let you actually stream to YouTube or something like that if that's what you're trying to do. If you want to do anything special with it, you need the server to catch the other side. But the rental typically can be both ends. Like usually they'll send you the server unit and that you do have to have on the internet somewhere, a good internet, and then you need a video out and put it back in and that type of thing. But I do believe you can stream directly to YouTube from the LiveU as well. Next question
is from Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina. Once again, and he asks, is there a film that can be applied to a glossy LED monitor to make it matte for outdoor viewing situations?
Go ahead, Carl.
Take a look at Corning's offerings. They do offer some films that go on top of to make a nano-textured. They have these kind of nano-textured film coating. So take a look at what Corning's got on offer at the moment. I don't know the name of it right now.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
And 3M, besides making their privacy screens, they do have an anti-glare 24-inch is about $60 at B&H.
Go ahead, Jonas.
You put a back projection thing in front of it.
You can, yeah. It's just hard to get it to fit well. We've done that for LED walls. Go ahead, Jason.
I would try a sunshade before trying to matte something that's glossy. That's a personal choice, and it doesn't always work, but it's worth a shot.
You just tend to lose some of your blacks, so it's hard to see. It's hard to see your blacks as soon as you take the gloss out. Next question.
Stefan Fischer in Würzburg, Germany is up next with my MixPre 6 just arrived. Now the firmware update fails because I have to use a MixPre formatted data card, which is rejected by my Mac, and he's using Big Sur at the moment. Any ideas on how to get my Mac to read this card so I can put the new firmware on the thing?
That is quite a conundrum. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
I'd use Parallels. Just grab a virtualization. Even Ubuntu should permit it, I think. But if not, just an old version of Windows.
Yeah, go ahead, Leo.
Yeah, at times there are things like this where you just have to resort to finding a PC to format and use it for that. Also, I check on the size.
Mac. Like I think it's just the.
Yeah.
I think. Oh yeah.
I was going to say also the other thing is size. A lot of times it's the size of the cards that are causing problems because they're too big. You know, you only need literally a 1 gig card on most of these things, but you know, it's when you've got too big a card that causes problems.
Yeah, Richard.
I'm using MixPre3, but so it might be different. But I have not had this option on a problem on Big Sur and the cards. So I'm just wondering if there's something in the format chain that you're doing that's not quite right.
Or the card reader. So if you've used the card reader, that's great. Older card readers, I've had a lot of problems with of them just not being read by the Mac. So it's not the card itself; it's the actual reader. So buying a modern reader might be, if you've had it around for a long time, you should just throw it away. Like literally more than 2 years, just throw the card reader away and get a new one. They're not very expensive. And the older ones, there is some. We've had a lot of things where it just shows up and says this isn't a drive. I can't see the drive, but put a new card reader in, works immediately. Next question.
Mike Emmett in Melbourne, Australia is up next. And Mike says, I had my mind blown by a couple of demos in after hours of mixing a show in the cloud. Where do you recommend starting out down this path? And do you have any recommended reading?
Go ahead, Carl and Jonas.
So the series done right here on Office Hours. It was done by Jeff and Tucker and Guy and the group. That would be the best place to start because they're all up on YouTube right now, and I believe there's 4 or 5 in sequence that you can watch, and you can play along if you have access to AWS and you have those builds, and they tell you everything you need step by step. It gets a bit more deeper as you go in the videos, but if you go through them in order, it works out quite well. I've actually learned a lot from just watching those about what's possible. not necessarily actually doing it, but what's possible and what I can think I can actually do on top of that as well.
Yeah, Jonas and then Leo.
I just put in the link to the official AWS documentation for running vMix, especially in the cloud, and then keep asking questions here and be around in after hours when we are doing it. Then
One
you
of the
can
things
see
that
a lot of stuff.
one of the things I want to do this fall is actually that was supposed to be an intro, and then things got a little slowed down on my end. But one of the things I want to do is start doing labs with building the AWS pieces. But just say, hey, we're going to do this one part all together, not trying to do everything, not trying to build a mix, but the same thing we're doing with MetaHumans right now in Unreal is that we're going to go very, very slowly. And we're going to talk, for an hour each week. I just kind of go through the one part and chew on it and make sure that everyone understands it. So that's coming in the fall. Go ahead, Leo.
Jonas really covered it.
Okay, great. Next question.
Andrew Flowerdew in Warwick, UK is up next. I didn't click. Okay, there we go. And he asks, I have to connect HDMI from the computer to HDMI on an 86-inch display using a Cat6 network. I also need to do the same for USB. What equipment should I use?
Go ahead, Leo.
So depending on how long your Cat6 network is, if you're going back from point to point, so you could be going back to your to wherever you distribute and back out again, you are pushing the limits on some of these things. It is really difficult, particularly on things like USB. USB, if you're trying to send audio over USB, you have a limitation on there. There are a lot of equipment available out there to do this. I use some. There's many on places like Amazon. I always look for the ones which are the pro consumer ones, which have a better connection. You can see that there's ones out there, but you may have to try it and cry a lot because it won't work.
I'm not going to give you this. Is not the cheap solution, but when we really need to get things connected over a variety of things, we use a company called ihse.com. They build the KVMs, the connections, they build these little modular boxes that we can decide what we're going to put in. I admit we haven't run them over Ethernet, like we haven't run them through a switch. Over Cat we have. We usually use fiber with these, but we use them for like if I have an EVS in one part of the building and I need to run it with an operator on another part of the building. These are the tools that we use to do it. Low latency, high reliability, works all the time. I actually don't know how much they cost because they're usually companies that I just recommend them. But it's a really great piece of hardware. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, Crestron also has a number of HD-based T extenders. I'm not sure if they'll work over a switch network, but we'll use them all the time and just pull Cat between the two locations.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
That's exactly what I was going to say is the HD-based T. Geffen has some, and they also carry RS-232 and USB a lot of times, along with infrared signaling from one end to the other.
Right. Next question.
Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina, and here on the panel says that I'm going to build out a small studio in my basement. The room is 17 by 11 feet, 5 meters by 3.3 meters, and is carpeted. I plan on painting a wall gray. What sort of lighting and soundproofing should I look into?
I build a grid. I tell everybody the same thing. Build a grid. Like it's just life-changing. Like don't put anything on the ground.
Schedule 40 pipe? Or
well, I use Speedrail. I use Speedrail.
Speedrail, yeah.
So I use Speedrail grid with Hollander, attachments, and like you can find cheaper ways to do it. It's just just do it the right way the first time. like I don't have the right way right now. I'm getting ready to redesign it. I have pipe that I bought. My one because we're doing this every day. It's hard to tear apart. But what I got into it, which I regret now, is. I have pipe that I bought at the hardware store, so you can use that. It just has a whole bunch of idiosyncrasies and I'm afraid of putting things on it. So it limits what I can do with my kit. But when every other place that I've lived for the last 10 years, I've had a grid. And go ahead, Carl.
So I would suggest something that has a Bowens mount, so aperture, the 120s to 300s. The reason why is because if you're actually building a studio and that you can leave the lights on light stands, then you have a lot more flexibility with softboxes, and you can upgrade your softboxes too. So you can buy a cheap one that comes with a light first, and then umbrellas or whatever, and then you can go up to You know, I've got a softbox that's 7 by 5 feet, so it's humongous. But yeah, it gives you a lot of flexibility with softboxes and grids and stuff to change your look or to change the setup of your studio. You may want to do like product reviews or something like that, and you can do the top down with a softbox that lights the whole table, or you can just do yourself. But yeah, something with a Bowens mount. You got the Godox, which is a cheaper end. You got fanless from Godox, which is mid-priced, and then you go to the apertures and beyond.
Go ahead, Bill.
And you note soundproofing. You're actually lucky in one respect. You say it's in a basement. That's going to make things much easier on you because you only have one place for sound ingress, and that's above you at the ceiling. We usually talk not of soundproofing because that is very hard to achieve, although being underground is an excellent way to do it. We talk about sound treatment, which is making sure that there are not reflections building up and causing particular frequencies to be boosted unnaturally in your recording environment. So you want a lot of soft things in the room to keep those bounces from happening. Sofas, wall hangings that are thick, things like that are all a plus. You can get commercial sound treatment, but putting one in a particular place is a little bit of an art, and measurement tools will help to see where reflections are coming from so you can kick them. It is generally a complicated thing, and getting some advice or at least reading up a lot on sound treatment is a very good idea if you're going to do this to make your living.
I mean, you can probably afford to lose a little space and building. I mean, it just depends on how serious you want to get about it. You know, like it's just, there are a couple things that make things easier. Being able to, if you create a 3 to 6 inch gap of air around it, so you build it, you float the room. There's a lot of research there, but it can be done, and it's not that hard. Like it is technical, and you have to think through it. But you can do it. Will you do it perfectly? Maybe not, but it'll make a big difference. You know, if you get close. Like it's not one of those things like it works or it doesn't work. It can work progressively. Then you can cut. You know, if you can cut 40 dB, you might, if you floated it correctly, it might be 80 dB, but 40 dB will be a lot. You know, and it's a good project to kind of play with. It's easy. The only time you can float the room is when you build it. so do think about that. You know, like it's, after that it gets real painful. And then having a raised floor, or because that space isn't very big, a raised floor won't cost very much. You know, these little floors that have gaps in them. You can just gap up an inch and a half.
3 inches or
inch and a half is fine. But what's nice about that? How high is the room?
9 feet.
A little short.
Yep.
That'll be the hard part. So you don't want to raise it up too much there. But raise it up an inch and a half. That way all your cables are clean. You know, and you may not need that right now, but again, the hard part is you got to make a bunch of hard decisions at the very beginning that you have to live with until you decide. Like I've made bad decisions, and so I'm living with that. And in the next couple of months, I'm going to tear it all apart and put it back together. But you want to, think through that of what you're willing to live with for a couple of years. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, hardware stores have this really cool, they're 2x2 wood planks that have little plastic underneath that actually raise it from the floor about an inch to an inch and a half.
Yep.
And you can get those, I think they're like $40 for like 5 squares or something like that. So you should be able to get a good area very well. And also think about scrims, because that can help with the sound traveling.
Yeah, we're going to accelerate a little quickly. We're going to go to the next one. We're going to move a little bit faster because I haven't been managing the time very well, and I know how long the Ruthless reviews takes. Next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenalb, Germany is up next. Follow up to yesterday's elk presentation. Could the elk be a possible solution to live stream kits to control the mic input? So we even could separate audio and video right at the beginning and mix it in the studio like we do on a real stage.
Carl?
At the moment, the two developers that said, they said no. But as Alex asked for it, I could see they're thinking maybe this is a good feature to add, and maybe this is a feature that may sell more units than maybe the low latency part of the features that are in there. So hopefully it does come, but it's still in beta. So fingers crossed that they can add full remote capability to their product.
Stuart, real fast.
Yeah, they did talk about being able to control the input levels.
No, they said it's not a feature that's there yet.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And speaking about controlling things remotely, the chat would like to remotely control getting the questions back into the chat.
We won't be able to do that today if it's not showing up because it's a programming thing. I see it, so I don't know why it's not going out. Next question.
Danny Law in Malaysia is up with using Zoom plugins on Stream Deck. When pressing the unmute button on the Stream Deck, somehow it resets my Logitech C922 webcam. Bug on the plugin, perhaps? Any ideas?
I think it's the framing. We've had this issue. Go ahead, David.
Just gonna say, a lot of these the buttons are just key commands, and I'm wondering if maybe there's a shared key command in the Logitech.
We've had I don't know what when you say reset, whether it's framing. I guess 922 doesn't frame in and out. If it's framing, we've seen a lot of times when something's been made active, it suddenly pops to the widest frame, whatever beyond whatever you have zoomed. We don't have an answer for that yet. We just know that it's a problem. Next question.
Doug Ferguson in Indianapolis, and here on the panel is asking, does anyone own a Tricaster?
How do you like your Tricaster, John?
You know the answer, Alex. I was talking to Doug on Discord. I've owned 3 over the years. Every one of them has locked up during the show. I'll never buy another one.
Yeah. Next question.
Sandro.
You skipped me.
Go. Oh, Doug, I didn't see it down there. Sorry about it. Hurry up.
It was supposed to be a PSA. Don't ever get one. I own one. Don't ever get one.
Right.
I can share the stories later.
Next question.
Sandro in New York City is up next with, what is the best Zoom audio pathway for the MixPre3 Atem Extreme ISO BMP CC 6K camera for in-ear monitors and a PR40 mic? And would connecting the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K reduce sync delay?
If you ran your audio into the 6K and then ran it into the switcher and then ran it into the computer, you should have zero sync issues. I mean, because it's now the two of them are bonded all the way through. So that is the way to remove a sync issue there. Yep. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael says, if you had to work for a crew size limit of 10 for a streamed music theater event with no audience, how would you keep the crew size low? Would you have the audio mixer use an iPad and mix effect to cut and use pan-tilt zoom cameras instead of camera operators?
Go ahead, Carl.
So if you can only have 10 people in the room, you want those 10 people controlling hardware that's hard to operate over the web. So mixers like audio mixers and video mixers, that can be done over the web. What can't be done is camera operators. PTZ controllers are a little bit harder to do. So if you can have 10 people in there, put them towards sound, the actual physical, get the microphones in the right spots. So have 1 or 2 gurus for sound, have as many camera operators as you can, and probably 1 or 2 gurus for hardware. So the actual switches that need to be remote controlled from the other side of the planet if they want.
Yeah, I mean, setting up a quick setup for online is complicated. You know, like that's the thing you can be kind of careful. If you're gonna do it all the time, maybe you build that slowly. But the people that we always need on the ground we need a playback operator, we need an A1, we need a TD. Those are 3 that just have to be there. Then we often do hybrids between PTZs and camera operators. Camera operators are the hero cameras. They are the ones that are getting the close-ups, that are getting the smooth pans. And then we might have PTZs doing many of the other, kind of wide shots and even just lots of programmed shots to do that. But 10 is plenty for that type of thing. An A1, a couple of A1s, and you'll want to not have PAs. That would be crazy. Like just letting you know, like cutting out your PA. Your PA is the grease that makes everything work. Like it's like running in it without, not having 1 or 2 PAs is like running an engine without any lubricant. So it's like it's not a good experience. So so make sure that you have at least 1 PA that just can handle things that need to be picked up. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany says, can the zoom feature be controlled by the Atem software on a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K equipped with a metabones speed booster in combination with a Canon motorized EF zoom lens?
Go ahead, Carl, real quick.
Okay, so for the Canon stuff, no. The reason why it's even in the manual, Blackmagic say these are the 4 lenses for that mount. So the reason why is if you put one of the new Cine Servo zooms that get controlled through the EF mount, that's an EF protocol. It's not understood by Micro Four Thirds. So it's only the Micro Four Third lenses that have the powered zoom that'll work through that particular mount, regardless of what adapter you put on.
Next question.
Stefan Fischer of Würzburg, Germany says, what travel router with 4G do you recommend to build a local network on the venue with Ethernet available? Better quality beats cheap price, he says.
Go ahead, Leo, real quick.
So I've been using the TP-Link ones a number of times and I've had no problems with them. But just be aware, the bottom level models do not have 1 gig on the local port. So you need one with the 1 gig and then go higher from there.
We've always used PEP waves. I mean, that's kind of our process there. Next question.
Hazma Kajar in Cape Town. For the cooking show, we want to bring in a KN deck with cooking steps from a separate computer. This same computer is an attendee. No to screen shares. Can't go through the Atem as that is on the host computer. How to do this?
Go ahead, Jonas.
Any software switcher that can give you a virtual webcam, OBS, vMix, Mimo Live, and the one that Leo uses.
Yeah, I don't know if I understand the question completely. Yeah, I have to think through that one. We might have to.
He wants to
workshop
put it in a box instead of screen sharing.
Yeah, so the
Wants to
the
always have
attendee
the
would use
current
it as their
step.
camera.
All right. Yeah, I would use something like Mimo Live on a Mac, because I know that you have a bunch of Macs. Next question.
Matt Parker in Sarasota, Florida is up next with, is it possible to send a 1400 by 1050 signal over SDI? If so, recommendations for a converter from DVI to SDI that can do the conversion.
Go ahead, Leo.
Yes, it is. You've just got to be careful about the converters. It's the everything in SDI it runs in Gs, and it's the amount of bandwidth it can run. I don't know what that is. That's probably 6G if, off the top of my head. So you need 6G converters. The smaller ones are 3G, which is 1080p. So you need to look at the bandwidth ratings for them.
You probably need a pretty refined image scaler to do that correctly, because you basically have to build an anamorphic image. So you're going to basically need to stretch it to where it needs to go and then stretch it back, one or the other, but you can't just push it through. I think it'll be forced to be some kind of legal video signal. So we would typically use something like a MixPre to do that, where we get an image that comes in as the DVI input spec. Then we convert it to HD SDI in a format that it's full screen, that's not losing resolution, but it sits in there. When it comes out the other end, we have to retransform it back in. That's going to give you the cleanest image. It's not the cheapest solution. Next question.
Ernest Floyd in Bastrop, Louisiana says, I've got mics that need to be shared. I'm planning to get an XLR Y cable. Both sides will go out to separate MixPres. Is this the best way to set things up? They will never be used simultaneously.
I will always avoid Y cables if I can. It just puts you in a position where there's added noise, there's added, you don't have control. You get it into something that you can route it is generally a better solution. Carl, real quick, and then we're gonna move on.
So just take a look at Behringer mic splitter, XLR splitter. It's actually a box that does it as active electronics rather than passive.
Next question.
Stephen Fisher of Würzburg, Germany. Next with update, my 2012 MacBook built-in card reader took the card and the MixPre is just on the way to its new firmware. That means that the card reader was the problem. So we solved one from earlier.
Excellent. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael next. What would you recommend for cleaning LCD screens without streaks? I have a microfiber cloth, but even with the cloth, I still find streaks on every screen I've cleaned it with.
Go ahead, David.
50-50 solution, distilled water and either isopropyl or white vinegar. Spray it on the cloth, wipe down, and then buff with a dry cloth.
Go ahead, Jason, real quick.
I've had good luck with bottled eyeglass cleaner, not the wipey things, but the ones that you can actually spray. And that is basically, if you look at the ingredients, the same as what David said.
All right. For some folks, we just push back your questions. Anything, when we run out of time, anything that is under 2 votes goes back. So for the producers, just always keep that in mind as well as you work through those. When we get to the end, we just need to move on. So I did kick those back to you, so you could bring them in tomorrow if we didn't get to them today. So let's jump. We're going to change directions and start doing the Ruthless review. Now we have to kind of move quickly. We want to make sure that we get to everyone. A lot of times this one has run over. So we have, I think we have 20, right, to go through, 21. So we've got a couple minutes per person and we have to kind of try to stick to it. So let's get started here. Let's start with Jonas. I'm going to do it in the order that I see it. And if you guys keep on coming and going, then I'll get very confused and we might critique you twice. So just try to stay stable. All right. Jonas, let's take a look at your video here.
So should I just explain my video chain?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a new lens that you all probably noticed. It's a 1.7 25 millimeter MFT lens into my GH5, and that goes directly into my Atem Mini Extreme. I have a small key light that I'm newer panel that I'm bouncing off the wall in front of me, and I have a small hairlight behind me. That yeah.
I think it looks really good. Any comments? I think that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I meant to raise my hand.
Go ahead, Aaron.
ADD. Is your hairlight on? I can't even really see your hairlight.
Yeah, it's on.
You might want to move it at a higher angle. Yeah. You know, it's behind you, but you may want it to be a little bit more overhead. Like mine's nearly right over my head. It might be mine might be too much, but it's a little. But to get it, you may want it to have. Is it a large source or a small source?
It's a young new stick light, like a LED.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ken.
Terribly sorry to interrupt. Do we want to continue this on YouTube or cut it?
Yeah, nope. It's still on YouTube. Go ahead, Leo.
Quick question: is your camera on autofocus or is it locked?
It is on autofocus.
Yeah, because you just move in and out ever so slightly every now and again.
And if you're off-centered,
to me, you are.
If you're off-centered, autofocus will be challenging. You know, like it's a challenging thing to do there. And generally I would, because of what we're doing next, my request would be to try to find a centered view that works for you, because we're going to build lots of super sources, and if you're off-centered, you'll be cut off all the time. Yeah. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, just the same on the autofocus. Even when it was sharp on Jonas's eyes, you could still see it hunting on the bar of lights that's in the background, especially the frame itself was still disappearing, even though his eyes were staying sharp. So it's, lock it down.
I love the look of the lens. I think the lens is a really nice bokeh. You know, it's really improving it. I think that warm colors behind you always compete with you a little bit. Just always know that that's more challenging. Bright lights behind you make it harder to have you feel like you're popping out. So right now, your background is a little brighter than you are. So your background is kind of stepping forward instead of stepping backward. So just, you know, it might be something to think about.
I bought a dimmer for the light so I can tune it down so you just see the playing things.
The your headspace overall is probably just a little big. You know, just as, you know, and I've done that in the past too. I'm trying to also back up just a little bit, just give it just a little bit more space. So generally what I'm trying to do usually is have my shoulders just end their curve. You know, that's where I want them to, you know, to be there to kind of and frame my head. And I'm to what Roscoe had talked about earlier, I'm trying to have my eyes pretty much on that top third and my chin pretty much on that bottom third. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. But yours is just a touch.
Yeah,
but
the wall is permitting me from moving the camera back.
Yeah, exactly. It's always there's always a good technical thing that it's imperfect. We're doing this in our house anyway. It's great, but it looks amazing. It's come a huge amount in the last. It feels like last week. Was it over the last couple of days that you did this? That you upgraded?
Yeah, the last month I worked on.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Getting the new lens and everything.
Yeah, it looks great. Let's go to Aaron. Aaron.
Hey guys, I'm using my 12 to whatever it is, Panasonic Leica lens on a GH5. I have a ring light over here, and as my key, I have no fill. It just sort of wraps, and then I have a hair light / background light up here, which is a little aperture MC.
And what comments? Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
The contrast looks a little bit low to me. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, it looks a little bit tighter
slightly.
contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, you could probably just use a little bit more in the blacks, but it's super close. Again, head might be just a little large in frame. You know, like if I could get more space, yeah, like that would be better there. So that would be, and I'm mostly. What I'm thinking about right now is as we do super sources, this will get much more complicated, you know, into next month, because we want all, and this we'll have to adjust it, but we'll want all the, you know, heads to be the same height, same size. So we'll all have to, you know, that'll be a complicated thing to figure out. Go ahead, Stuart, real quick.
Yeah, David, can you change the background color for your light?
No, we're not on David right now.
Oh, sorry, Aaron, I should say. I'm looking, doing
Sure,
multiple
what color
things.
would you like?
No, I'm just going to suggest that if you're going to be wearing a shirt that's lots of light blue and lots of blue, a contrasting color might work better to make you stand out just a little bit more from the background, as well as the usual tip of having the background be slightly darker than what you are, probably not as dark as what mine is.
And I tried, and I would typically want to have the hair light be one thing and then the light coming down from below as opposed to from above. That's usually the approach that I would take.
Yeah,
real
I'm
quick.
space constrained here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. What we're trying to do is just look at the pixels and have the conversation, and then we know that everyone's in an imperfect situation. Bill, real quick.
Yeah, I was just going to note that space constraint is a big issue always. And I don't know if everybody was watching when Aaron changed his background color, the spill on his shoulders became pronouncedly different colors. And that is why we look to have more space if you can. Obviously, you're not going to knock on a wall to do this, but it's just the reality of how things work.
Yeah. But it's a huge jump forward again for you as well.
Yeah,
so
you look great.
Good work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Carl? Yeah, go ahead, Roscoe.
Real quick, a barn door. If the light source is small enough, if you put a barn door, you'll hopefully get some of that spill off your shoulders.
But I think the problem is it's using hair light as well. so it's Carl.
It's more of an incidental hair light.
Right.
So my camera is a 5DSR. It's a full frame DSLR. It's a nifty 50 on the front. I think it's at about f2 at the moment. I am 1 meter from the camera. My bookshelves behind me are 2 meters from me. So there's I'm sitting at the 1/3 point. And also my lights. So I'm just pretty basic lighting setup. So I have a 90-watt light that's being reflected in the front of me, and just a basic key light that I put on behind me for hair and hair light behind me for hair and shoulder separation from the bookshelves.
Comments? Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
So Carl has the same thing that I was just running into. I actually looked at my picture for the first time today, and it's humid in San Diego, so I'm getting more perspiration than I normally do. And I noticed I had a real highlight here. So I reached into my drawer and grabbed my fabulous natural bamboo charcoal absorbers, which you can get on the internet for almost no money. And if you just run these over a highlight that's coming up anywhere, and we get them in the summer when things get humid and we perspire a little more, but they can really knock down highlights really quickly. You're facing a couple of them, particularly
like
on
5
your
degrees
cheeks
here at the moment.
Yeah,
Bill.
exactly.
It's pretty cold.
Happens
It is
when
pretty
gets
cold
humid
here.
and hot.
This is just my shiny head. I just have a chrome ring, that's all.
And that's where more diffuse lighting, larger diffuse lighting can also help a little bit. With that, where it can handle a lot of that by itself. I'm naturally very shiny, and I'm only a little shiny here. But in person, I'm very shiny. Which you probably saw on MacBook yesterday. Like without large sources, I would be super shiny. So overall, the frame and looks amazing. Aaron.
I'd almost like to see the background be a little darker, or a little more, maybe a different color.
I don't know.
It's pretty.
If I wouldn't go too much darker, I would say that the vignetting of the
That's pretty cool.
I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't.
It's very cinematic.
Yeah, I think if anything, I like it. I might pull back the vignetting just a touch, the feel of vignetting around the edges, but only a little bit. You want it there, just maybe not quite as much as it's there, but overall it pulls you forward really nicely. So I wouldn't do too much to it. Go ahead, Chris.
When I see Carl in After Hours and he's not in this seat, I am disappointed. I love this shot. I love everything about it. I wouldn't change it at all.
What I will say is Carl is actually the reason I'm building a set. So like I saw this thing, I was like, I need to up my game. I still want to have this as a possibility, but I was like, I need to have something back there. It's really good. So, and then Chris is showing that line. Jason is next.
Yeah, so come at me because the new studio is going to have basically nothing in common with the place that I'm sitting at now. But, I threw up the background because, I was inviting Ruthless.
Yeah, so, I mean, the one thing is that you're typically a lot smaller in frame than everyone else. And so my request as we move forward would be to frame up more. So usually most people are a little too big, but you're a little too small. If you look at the rest of the heads, you just want to try. We're going to try as we move forward to close that gap, in that process. So being centered and having heads be generally the same size is something that we'd like to do. I think overall the lighting actually looks pretty good. It's nice and soft, and I'm not a big fan of the logo. Like to be blunt, like the people putting I'm not a big fan of logos.
I actually forgot that was down there because I spend all day on Zoom. That's funny.
So anyway, but in general, logos are something that I may not talk about it, but I don't like it. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm just going to point out that Jason is one of the few members of this panel who doesn't have a receding hairline. And that's going to affect our perception of how large a space in the screen his head takes.
Yeah, but I do have a gigantic head. So, there's that.
Okay, but the only criticism I would give of this picture as I'm seeing it right now is that shirt is too shiny compared to all the other matte surfaces in the image.
This is less of it. I mean, I think it looks fine in this shot. The things that we would avoid typically there are stripes, white, which that has both. So,
excellent.
So usually those are the kind of things that we try not to have. Also, of course, you're just a little close to that background. I mean, I know that you're not in your final position, where you're going to move the studio, but you can see your contact shadow, and so being able to get far enough away or change the lighting in such a way that you don't see a contact shadow is usually the thing we try to do.
I am so looking forward to it. And I've got a whole slew of new lenses that I cannot wait to play with. So yeah, all that's coming.
All right. Awesome. All right. Next is David Brady. Let's see.
We are coming at you through a Lumix GX85 with a 1.720 lens. A couple of newer lights on either side that I'm still trying to dial in. Little key light above my head. It's just like a half mirrored big LED bulb. And
overall, I think it looks great. I think that the blacks on yours look just a little crushed, like it's just a little contrasty. Your head might be just a little bigger. Like then we might want to pull back just
yeah. Then I got
but just maybe split the difference there. Come back in a little bit. Like that kind of frame. Yeah, that's a pretty good frame right there. But yeah, I think right now, I mean, you've had a lot of different looks, but I think that right now the blacks look just a little contrasty. Go ahead, Aaron.
I think the background light is a little hot. I think it's sort of blowing out in the back. I like it. I like the green. I think it works well with you, and I like the computers back there and the shelves and stuff, but
it would be nice to have some more highlights on the top row. There's just a bunch of stuff up there, but we can't really make it out. Yeah, on the other side. Yeah, that area. It'd be nice to kind of show that stuff off. Go ahead, Sky.
I enjoy the green. It's almost a branding, but to Alex's point, the blacks are very, very crushed. The backdrops I love, and now that you've got the rack focus there, they're not so distracting, but they're interesting. And you have very interesting artifacts of your historical past, and so it gives character. And again, that the special Mac back there is like, oh, that's a piece of art.
Yeah, and again, that's so the funny thing is the bookshelf idea that I had was from Carl, that I have to have a bookshelf, and then putting artifacts back there is from David. So I was like, I just want to put out the bibliography on where my set is coming from. Go ahead, Bill.
The thing that I noticed as anything else that I would light for would be that the bottom half of your picture behind your image is very light, but then you get this dark stripe that happens right where your hair hits, and your hair is very dark. So I'm getting very little separation of you from the background in this band across the top. So I would do something about putting either something lighter behind that part of the shelf or something that keeps your whole head shape clear. I think that would give you a little better separation.
Yeah, I've been tweaking the lights a little bit, just getting ready for today, and I might have overshot a little.
That's all good. All good. Aaron.
You also have a shadow across your eyes from your glasses. So it's hard to see your eyes. Yeah. That's better.
The shadow's gone when you take your glasses off. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Just in regarding David's question that he put in before, as big as possible makes it as soft as possible, and that helps with the shadows because it gets light in and around the glasses, so it's coming in at different angles.
Yeah, go ahead, Alan. Can't hear you, Alan.
Apologies.
Yeah.
I was muted over there. It's just a follow on from the last two, which is a little bit of fill light under the chin and with maybe a reflector just to soften it, the shadows from the glasses and under the chin.
It looks great. It's great. Courtney?
Is that I'm next, or
you're next? No, I'm just throwing the ball at you, just like you need to figure this out. Yeah, exactly.
I didn't have my hand up on it.
Give us some input.
All right.
It's definitely jumped up in quality from the last time we did this.
That's thanks to Carl. I've changed from a Mocos to the Canon M50
nice.
II, which has a nice lens on it. It gives me a little more bokeh in the background, but not quite as much as maybe I'd like. But I can't move the camera any further away. It is right sitting on top of my monitor, and there's a printer directly behind it, so I can't move it back a quarter of an inch or anything, so I'm kind of limited. And I'm faced with the fact that this is a living room, and I can't put up a background because it would dominate the living room, and I need to use it as a living room the rest of the day. And I have floor-to-ceiling windows along this wall and along that wall, and as the sun rises, today it is overcast, so I'm not fighting as much, but usually there's this huge glare that happens right about now on my face, and I bought the Nanlite panels, which I can now rotate and kind of control the light. I could adjust the brightness level on them, but to get up, I have to get up and reach the back of the light to do that, so it makes it tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron?
I'd love to see you highlight some stuff in the background.
Well, if
there's some statues back there, that'd be cool.
Is there a light that there's like a statue back there I can't quite make out?
Hey, Google.
I can't quite make out. Is it possible to turn that?
Corner.
Is it possible to get a light on that? Oh, there you go.
There you go. Thank you.
That's it. Perfect.
Just have to get my personal assistant to do that for me.
That's better.
So in all seriousness, though, when the light's on that side, it adds a lot more flavor to it and balances the image. So it actually, I know that it's a little showing off, but it's a good kind of showing off. So it is, and so I would leave it on because you have a lot of lightweight on one side and then not on the other, and it balances it out much nicer. It also creates some more complex stuff back there that actually works. So I think it's.
I also have a little USB. It's 32K, but a little USB under the hat light down here that to light up my eyes.
That's great.
My hat from shading my eyes too much.
That's great. Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, that's the light under your eye that I can see your eyes. Your face is evenly lit, and it's your eyes that are your what I'm looking at. It was magical, and you just told us the magic. Thank you.
And for you, I might go in just a little bit, like just zoom in just a touch. I know it's farther back, but just a little.
How's that?
Yeah, I think maybe even just a touch more, just to match head sizes.
Sorry, hit my mic.
Yeah,
one touch more.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That just kind of that balances your scale, you know, from our perspective.
And a lot of times during the show, I'll be leaning back.
Right.
To rest my back, but
exactly.
I come forward when I answer a question.
Yeah. No, that works well. Aaron, real quick, we're gonna move on.
Your skin tone's a little bit red. I mean, I think it naturally is, but I think your camera is accentuating it.
I'll speak to my dermatologist.
All right, let's go. Let's jump to Sky. Sky, you're next.
Well, this is the example of how to not do something. No, I'm outside, and to Carl's point or somebody's point about the largest light source, I've actually got a umbrella trying to diffuse the big giant orb, and I am outside because we do have guests. So I will be moving into the guest room, bringing the Lazulite and having more light control. But here we are for the summer in the Northwest.
Actually, you need to talk to that gaffer and see if you can move that key. You know, like
I know, yeah. We'll wait 5 minutes; it'll change.
Yeah. You know, 12 by 12.
I think you might have. I think you're going to have to pray to get help.
The guy moves it all
Carl.
day long.
This is a Brio, which we are, since the last time we did this, it was previously the Mac Pro.
How are you
camera.
scaled in at all? Are you zoomed in at all?
I am scaled in. I am. Yeah.